Identify your most profitable, fulfilling services. So, what can you do in your office that brings you the most amount of joy and the most amount of income? All of the things that you're doing, whether it's paperwork, whether even it's exams or re-exams or modalities or whatever the case is, if they don't fit into your ideal day, let's train somebody else to do that stuff. Have a tech CA do your exam, have a tech CA do your history, and that opens you up to be able to do more of what you truly enjoy and what's going to be most profitable for you. So the bottleneck problem. So obviously, definition of bottleneck is anything that slows down progress, limits growth, or causes frustration in practice. So many of you are at stages in your practice where you'd like to grow, you'd like to see more people, you'd love your associates to see more people, you'd obviously like to have more income, and something is stopping you from getting there. So this is going to help you to start to analyze things in your office in different ways from different perspectives and try to at least identify those bottlenecks and then try to figure out solutions on how to overcome them and get past them. This is really huge. And I remember going through lots of different bottlenecks over the years and getting some coaching on them and making some subtle little changes that all of a sudden, boom, it created a whole new perspective and our practice just jumped to the next level. It didn't incrementally grow, it just jumped to the next level when you identify that bottleneck. So the goal of today is really to identify and overcome these bottlenecks. So the big thing that we want to do as chiropractors, and we all collectively have the same goal. We are way past the stage of certainty where we are just treaters of pain. And I think we can all agree with that. We do something unique in the healthcare world. We can bring something really, truly unique and very valuable to the healthcare world. So it's really important that we position ourselves as the expert. So not only we know that, our team knows that, and all of the patients in your community and all of the potential leads in your community start to know that as well. So we can deliver a high quality, unique service. It's really important to cast a big vision for our team. And the other thing, too, and we're going to talk about, is when you truly identify who you are and what you're delivering, be very willing to say no to anything that does not advance your vision. So that's part of the problem is that we're saying yes to things that don't fit into our vision. And we're going to try to really break that down a little bit today. So, common bottlenecks in chiropractic practice. Well, many of us are trying to provide too many services. We're trying to be a Jack or Jill of all trades, and that is really diluting. That's the problem. It dilutes our expertise. It creates marketing confusion. And in our marketing, we're attracting the wrong type of patients because we're casting a very broad message. And I'm not talking just about online marketing. I'm talking about anything you do. You go do a lunch and learn, you go do a makeover, you go do all these different things to position yourself in the community, but it's really important to be intentional in your message so that you can position yourself in the way that you want to deliver your message in your office. And then, of course, you have operational inefficiencies. There's no standardized systems or no consistent procedures, or you have systems in place, but they're not written in stone or they're not efficient. They're not consistent. So that message is not delivered in an efficient and consistent manner, and we get burned out. So the problem is attempting to do it all rather than focusing on our core strengths. It creates a practice that creates a lot of chaos, and it's chaos that burns us out. And honestly, that's the biggest challenge in chiropractic. And I hear that all the time for years and years of coaching is people get burned out. They haven't reached their potential, but they're burned out. They're tired because they're just trying to manage too many different things and juggle too many different things. So, why bottlenecks hinder business growth? Well, less efficiency leads to increased stress. Offering more services, like I mentioned, can dilute your expertise and it confuses your brand. So, confused branding results in fewer ideal patients. And this is really important. And this is something that we really work on, especially with our marketing company, is to create a brand for certain offices. So, really digging down deep as to what that chiropractor, and I would say this to you, is really identify what you're trying to deliver. So, who is it you're trying to portray yourself as, and what services are you truly, really good at? And when you can start to clearly identify those, not just for yourself in your own mind, for your team, then your community understands who you are and you position yourself as an expert and not a commodity. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So the key takeaway is recognize that saying yes to everything and everyone often holds chiropractors back. So the power of specialization and differentiation, why offering more is not the answer. So we have this thing often where we have the fear of missing out, and that leads to many of us to try serving everyone. We try to serve everybody that comes in, even if they're not necessarily fitting into our ideal patient avatar. And that is a big, big problem and will eventually create bottlenecks in your practice. So generalists get lost in the noise, but specialists stand out. And we want to start creating demand for our uniqueness. And this is a really important factor because if you look at, for example, creating demand, this is the biggest thing. We often had this saying, over the years is that 80 new patients a month cures all problems. Because if you knew that you had an endless supply of new patients, it would be very easy to tell people that don't fit into your specific niche or perhaps want a deal or perhaps don't want to follow your recommended care plan or don't want to jump into the care plan, they just want to pay as they go. If you had a whole bunch of patients waiting in line to get in, it would be easy to say, you know what, I'm sorry, I love you, but you don't fit into what we deliver here. I can't accept you as a patient. And you could have an office full of patients who really understood what you delivered. They would be your dream patients. What a wonderful type of practice that would be. You look at something like Apple in this picture here. Apple is great at branding themselves. They have a wonderful marketing system where they brand themselves that creates this huge high demand. So they release the newest version of the iPhone, and literally people line up the night before so they can be the first ones into an Apple store to buy that iPhone. So you can imagine, after they open the doors at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. in the morning, and these people go up to the front desk because they're all waiting to buy the new iPhone. If somebody got to the front desk and said, is it okay if I pay next week and take this iPhone today? Or, oh, I don't know if you only have the bronze color iPhone, oh, I want the silver one. Well, we don't have any silver ones in stock. Well, guess what? You see all the people behind you, you're going to take the bronze colored iPhone, even if that wasn't your first choice. So understand that creating demand for something that makes you unique all of a sudden really changes the way that you can practice and eliminates all of this FOMO, this fear of missing out. So, how to find your unique angle? Well, we want to try to start to identify our superpower. Most of us on this call are corrective care specialists. I mean, we can really take a new patient in, we can do an analysis, we can do whatever testing that we do during our examination. And we've all, like all of us on this line, have passed beyond that orthopedic testing type of model where we're just trying to manage pain. We're doing some level of objective measurement. And I would say to you, and you can ask yourself if you're still in that model where you're really starting to entertain that patient's concern of pain on your first visit through your exam, it's important to address them where they're at, but bring them into the world of subluxation, neurological function, innate intelligence, and removing interference. And doing that through your examination with the proper testing is so vital to create the office that you want to create and remove the bottlenecks. So if you had all of these patients in your office that really understood why they were there, that they're not there to just get their symptoms removed, they're there to correct their spine, remove the subluxation, take the interference away from the nervous system, and allow their body to express its full unique potential, wouldn't that be a wonderful world? So let's start to identify all of the systems that you use in your exam findings, the way you talk in your initial exam, and start really refining that so that you can again create those ideal patients. So you could be a corrective care specialist. Maybe you're good in pediatrics, geriatrics, athletes. I really found in my last few years of practice, it was actually kind of fun. I had a very unique way and ability, and I kind of discovered this over the years, was my ability to communicate with older people, especially older females, was really good. And because of that, I actually attracted a lot of older females into my practice. I loved, just talking with them and making subtle little jokes. And it was almost like a professional flirtatious type of attitude that I had with them. And most of them just loved it. And so I eventually attracted a lot of these people into my office. Well, they were very, very accommodating as far as accepting recommendations. They all had significant income, and so none of them were asking for discounts or any problems there. But I just had this unique ability to communicate with them. So I found my niche later in my years of practice, and as a result of that, I attracted a lot of older especially older females, but I had a lot of older people in my practice. Maybe you're an athlete, maybe you're into sports and you have a great way to communicate with athletes. So try to figure out exactly what you're good at and position yourself that way. Determine the problems that you solve best. Maybe you love seeing people with migraine headaches. Maybe you love seeing people with, certain conditions, and you have a unique way of adjusting them that gets great results for those specific conditions. And understand what your ideal patients truly want. And this is a really big thing. Understand what your ideal patients truly want is not always what they ask for. Well, what does that mean? It means that people will come in to your office looking for something different. And let's realize this right from the start is that when they've made the decision to see a chiropractor, there's all kinds of options for them to get quote unquote treatment. So whatever symptom they have, they could go to the medical doctor and take medication, which is probably the most efficient and cheapest way to cover up their symptoms. They could go to the physiotherapist and get some stretching and exercises, maybe some modalities. They could go to a massage therapist. They could go to their naturopath and get some supplements. They have lots of choices, but they've chosen to come to you for whatever reason. They may not know what makes you different, but they know innately that what you do is something unique. Otherwise, they would have chosen to go somewhere else. So even though they may have come to you initially because they want pain relief, ultimately, when they hear what you do is different, what they hear is when you can get to a root cause of a problem, when you can correct a subluxation, when you can show them pre and post x-rays or pre and post nerve scans, when they finally hear that and see it, then they realize that's exactly what they were looking for. They may not be able to define it in their mind when they first show up, but after they go through your system, if you have a good system of patient education, meeting them where they're at, and helping them change their paradigm, many of them will say, this is exactly what I was looking for. I wasn't sure what it was, but this is exactly it after they hear it. So that's really important for you guys to realize that and be firm with your patient education. Don't break down on that. So if somebody says they can't make a doctor's report, if somebody says they can't do a day two the next day, whatever that is, hold your ground. Be firm on that because you know what you do changes lives. So try your best not to bend on those things because you know when people go through your system, their life changes, their mind changes, their whole life changes. So be firm on your systems. So success through niching, and I'm going to just give you a few examples here. This is perfect example. So you look at example number one, a chiropractor who focuses solely on scoliosis or subluxation correction. Well, you know who that might be. I mean, we all know who Tony Nalda is. We know who Corey Wall is. They've positioned themselves as very specific corrective, spinal corrective, subluxation corrective chiropractors, and they have put the systems into place in their office to therefore show their expertise, get the results that they want to get. So if that's who you want to be, follow through with the proper systems. So here's an example. Many of you may not even have x-rays in your office, but you're using x-rays to explain to people about what they should do or the correction of subluxation, and this is what happens when your posture changes. Or maybe you're sending them out for x-rays and bringing those x-rays in and then showing those x-rays, drawing on them. But your doctor's report doesn't reflect that, or you're not doing home care. So there's missing things in that system if you're trying to position yourself in that way that have created a bottleneck because you really haven't put the proper things in place to position yourself as an expert. So that's what I'm trying to say is identify where your systems are failing. So if you're doing corrective care and you're doing pre and post x-rays on people, but you haven't got your patients on home care, that's a problem. That's a bottleneck. So start to identify that. Example number two, a practice that's built around caring for children. So fantastic. You might want to see lots of children, but many of you don't have a family plan in place. Many of you don't have a children's area in your practice. Many of you don't have the systems in place to ask those patients to bring their children in for an initial exam after they sign on for care. So these are things that if you really want to build a practice, you have to identify all the systems that are limiting you. And example number three, for example, a chiropractor who focuses on non-surgical disc herniation treatment. And before I go on to number three, actually go back to number two, because you all know somebody who is an expert in caring for children. So many of you know Tony Ebel. So Tony Ebel has positioned himself as an expert for caring for children, and now he's teaching other chiropractors how to care for children. But keep in mind, Tony Ebel built a pediatric practice by putting these things in place and positioning himself as that pediatric chiropractor. Back in the days when I was early in practice, there was Stu and Terry Warner. They didn't have any kids, but they positioned themselves as the pediatric chiropractors. There's Claudia Onrig, who started the baby adjusters. She positioned herself as a pediatric chiropractor. And so moving on to chiropractor number three is a chiropractor who focuses on non-surgical disc herniation treatment. Well, it was a friend of mine who actually changed his practice around. He was a corrective care chiropractor. He's out on the West Coast and decided he wanted to position himself as the chiropractor who focuses on non-surgical disc herniation. So he went total decompression, and eventually now, after adding decompression tables to his office, but changing his systems, changing his marketing, changing the way he educated people, now he has become the leading chiropractor on the West Coast of the United States for non-surgical disc herniation treatment. He has 12 decompression tables. He sees people 5 days a week, nonstop. Those tables are full 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and he's collecting about $800,000 a month as a result of that. Single doc in his office, and he has a bunch of team members. So that's the whole thing, is recognize who you want to become, position yourself that way, but make sure the systems fall into place to support that. Overcoming the fear of narrowing down. So some of us are fearful of telling somebody no. So a patient comes in and they want it. We call it, and I made a joke the other day talking to one of our clients, saying that they were trying to create Burger King chiropractic. In other words, and she said, well, what's Burger King chiropractic? I said, that's when patients want it their way. Burger King had this motto saying, have it your way. And so we always used to joke saying, it's Burger King chiropractic because you're letting patients have it their way. So, but we do that because we have the fear of them leaving. So we have to have this mindset shift that when we start to specialize and we draw our borders, we draw our boundaries of who we're willing to accept into our practice, that we're going to lose people. But actually, on the contrary, when you get really good at what you do and when you specialize in what you do, you end up attracting more people that fit into that niche because they see you as the expert. So specializing does not mean excluding everyone else. And the other thing is patients outside your niche. So even if you're the corrective care chiropractor, you may have people want to bring their children in. You may have people want to bring their relatives in or whatever the case is that don't necessarily fit into that ideal patient model. But because you've positioned yourself, you'll attract more of your ideal patients, but you'll still get referrals for all kinds of other patients too. So overcome that fear. And the transition needs to be smooth. So first of all, here's a kind of some action steps for you for today. So identify your most profitable, fulfilling services. So what can you do in your office that brings you the most amount of joy and the most amount of income? So for us as chiropractors, I mean, we're licensed to adjust spines. So let's make sure that the majority of our time is adjusting spines. So all of the things that you're doing, whether it's paperwork, whether even it's exams or re-exams or modalities or whatever the case is, if they don't fit into your ideal day, let's train somebody else to do that stuff. Have a tech CA do your exam, have a tech CA do your history, and that opens you up to be able to do more of what you truly enjoy and what's going to be most profitable for you. And start to identify things that gradually reduce the services that don't align with your vision. And here's a great example too. Many of you sell supplements in your office. But I'm going to challenge you here and say, are you truly an expert in those supplements? In other words, if somebody asks you why you have fenugreek up on your up on your shelf, can you truly describe what is fenugreek, what's it used for, what are the conditions it really does help, and what would be some of the contraindications of taking fenugreek? So if you can't answer that for things that are on your shelf, if you don't have a nutritional program in place, people perceive you as selling supplements as just another way to make some money. Well, maybe it's a one-stop shop. You come here, get your adjustment, grab your vitamin D, grab your vitamin C, and you're on your way. That's a bottleneck. You might not realize it, but that's a bottleneck. And what happens is it dilutes your expertise. People don't perceive you as an expert if you have diluted your expertise. So if you do want to carry supplements, if you do want to have supplements that you are fully aware of what they do, and put a nutrition program in place. Start talking to people about their nutrition, about their diet, about why they would take supplements, why they shouldn't take supplements, what would be good for certain conditions. Have a monthly nutrition talk in your office. That makes you look like an expert. It makes you look like you know what you're talking about. And then train your staff to refine your messaging. And this is a big one, you guys. Here's something to do, and again, an action step for your next staff meeting. Ask your staff to explain to you what you do. Just say, can you please explain to me what it is we do here in our office? And you'll be blown away at some of the answers you get. And it's going to hopefully light a fire in your belly to help them to be able to articulately talk about what it is you do in a very intelligent way. Your staff are your sales team. Like, let's be honest here. They're the ones who will position you and your office as being the expert or being the commodity. So it's really important to make sure that every single staff member on your team knows exactly what you do and is able to communicate that well. Systematize your training. So make sure that if you want to be the corrective chiropractor, make sure that you have the systems in place and your staff know exactly what happens, what you say in the room, what has to happen after the patient comes out of the room. Make sure everything is seamless so that people can look at an office that's working on all cylinders, that's very seamless, and go, wow, they know what they're talking about. Really important. We've talked many times about creating and updating your staff manual. Many of you don't have a staff manual in place. That's a bottleneck. One of your staff members leaves and you got to hire a new person, and then it's training all over again. Make it seamless. Get a staff manual in place for a lot of the little things, the scripting, the way that the procedures are supposed to happen, so that you can hand them that staff manual or send them a link for that staff manual if it's online, and they can just learn it. And then they can show up, and then you can train on it after they start to have the knowledge of what it is. And also incentivize their growth. If you're not incentivizing your staff to grow, that's a bottleneck. So realize, that your staff are probably one of the biggest bottlenecks in your office. They're either committed to growing or they're committed to sabotaging you. And that might not be something that they talk about, but subconsciously, they will sabotage your growth if you don't give them the vision and incentivize them. It's just human nature. As you get busier, if they're not incentivized, it means they have to work harder for the same money. And if they're working harder for the same money, guess what? They're not going to follow through. They're not going to make that extra phone call. They're not going to do the extra training. So make sure that incentivized program is in place. Simplify your marketing. So again, speak directly to your ideal patients. If you're trying to grow a pediatric practice, but you're putting out ads on Facebook about lower back pain, probably there's a disconnect there. And don't be afraid to pump your own tires. It's okay to tell people that you're the pediatric expert. It's okay to tell people that you are the number one chiropractor in your town that does spinal correction. It's okay to tell people that nobody else does spinal correction like we do here in our office. This is truly unique what we do. That's okay. Start being, being bold with that, and explain to your staff to be bold with that. That's really important. In your patient education, you have to start using some case studies. Take a patient from start to finish, show them their exam results, their x-rays, and start using that to show other people. Use it in your doctor's reports, use it in your re-examinations. Show them what can potentially happen to give them hope and to give them ideas. Use objections. Maybe somebody came in that had a great response because they stuck to care, but initially they were skeptical, or initially they couldn't afford it, but they found a way to do it and they followed through and they got great results. These are great things to use in your doctor's report because it gives people hope. It manages their objections. Use testimonials. For those of you who don't have that camera set up in your office on a regular basis, so you're getting testimonials on a daily basis, start doing that. That's so vital. And use specific messaging in your patient education. And focus on quality over quantity. It's better to be the go-to specialist than the commodity in your community. Develop a clear patient-focused message and utilize those testimonials and success stories in your marketing as well. That, again, is really important. One of the best things that we found, again, with our marketing company is ads that position you and capture attention of you with a patient and adjusting the patient and narrating that adjustment, or even showing the x-rays of that patient. Like, hey, here's Bob. He came in with sciatica, pain running down his leg. come here, let me show you Bob's x-rays. Here's Bob's x-ray, and you can see that he's got a subluxation, he's got a disc injury. These nerves that come out of the spine right here are totally choked. So if he treated this with medication or if he went to physiotherapy, this problem would never get corrected. That's why people come here and see me. Again, it's a marketing message that positions you as something unique and something different. So use these success stories. It's one thing to do marketing and attract 80 or 100 leads a month, but if you're only able to see a very small percentage of them, then that's defeating the purpose. Those people are not getting that message for some reason. And the last thing is identifying your unique position. So define your niche, define what you do. Start thinking about truly what you do and how you want to position yourself. Clarify the one thing you do better than anyone and make your procedures congruent with that position. So ask yourself, if you're the corrective chiropractor, are you still giving treatment on the first visit? And I hate using that word treatment, but are you adjusting? Are you doing some sort of treatment on the first visit? If that's a regular thing for you, then that's totally defeating the purpose of positioning you as the corrective chiropractor. If you're not doing an objective exam, if you're doing an exam that involves orthopedic tests, you're not positioning yourself as the corrective care chiropractor. If you've got a corrective care program, but you're still accepting people with pay as you go, that again is it's counterintuitive. It's incongruent. And people that get an incongruent message become the bottlenecks in your practice. Because guess what? They refer people just like them. It's almost like a cancer. They refer people like them, and then you grow a practice of people who drain your energy. If you want to see kids, but you don't have a family plan in place to see families at a very reasonable cost, so people can bring in two, three, four kids and their spouse and become family members of your practice over the long term, that's an incongruency and a bottleneck. And if you don't have any ongoing education systems where you're only focused on new patients and signing on new patients, but you don't have a system in place to retain your regular patients, again, that's a bottleneck. And I mentioned this earlier, if you're doing corrective care and you want to see people's subluxations corrected, but you're not recommending home care to every single patient, that's a bottleneck. Because I mean, and it doesn't have to be a full home care kit. Maybe it's just sleep rolls. Maybe it's just a traction unit. Maybe it's a wobble chair, whatever it is, but something that they can do at home to engage in their care. Really, really vital. So the final challenge is I want you to ask yourself, what will you stop doing this month to become a stronger, more focused chiropractor? And and the thing is here is to realize is take a look in the mirror because you have bought into your story, which means that there are things that you have put into your mind that are stopping you from growing. Like, oh, it's my town. Oh, I don't have the physical space in my office. Oh, my massage therapist or my other doctor in my office is using that room, so I can't use that room for re-examinations or whatever that. There's some story that you've bought into that is you're using as an excuse to stop you from growing into the next level. So start analyzing that story from a different perspective and ask yourself what you need to change. So closing thoughts. So bottlenecks are going to totally slow your growth. You need to eliminate them. Specialization leads to differentiation and greater success. And simplifying, and Brian called this out right at the beginning, simplifying allows you to serve better and scale faster. You eliminate all of the things that are draining your energy. So audit your current practice, assess what's working and what's draining you, and keep your stats and look at your stats. I mean, if a staff member keeps your stats, keep your stats. The leads, the appointments, the day one, two, three, and the conversions. At least keep those and know where the bottlenecks are. You can start to see them. Stats are very revealing. So figure out what's stopping you and why those things are showing up. So identify where you're seeing the best results. So where are you wasting your time? What could your team do that is draining your energy? And what activities pay you the best? And start focusing on those. Hey, if you've enjoyed this video, I would ask if you don't mind, go ahead and subscribe and hit a like on there or leave a comment. We'll respond to all the comments. We love what we do, and if the message that you got through this video resonates with you and you want to take your practice to the next level, you want to open up your mindset into a different thinking of chiropractic care, if you want to implement some systems into your office or train your team so that you can adapt and see more people and build a bigger practice, or if you're interested in marketing for your practice and getting your message, your unique and specific message out there to your community, there's a link down below. You can click the link. You can set up a call with me, or we can just arrange a time to do a Zoom meeting and just find out what your goals are.
be happy to talk to you and just happy to provide some direction and give you some suggestions. And if you want to take it to the next step and learn what it takes to get some coaching or get some marketing done for your office, happy to talk about that too. Have a good one.